The Star Phantoms are a loyalist chapter of the Adeptus Astartes created during the course of the 23rd Founding, which is also known within Imperial records as the Sentinel Founding. Despite their relative youth as a chapter, the Star Phantoms boast a proud and glorious history, with the chapter's actions having proved instrumental within multiple theatres of war. While the Star Phantoms have fought valiantly within a number of high-profile campaigns and conflicts, such as the Makarian Heresy and the Badab War, many of the victories and battlefield honours accumulated by the chapter remain both unsung and unacknowledged by the greater whole of the Imperium. This is due primarily to the fact that the Star Phantoms, for much of their existence, were left to operate along the very boundaries of Imperial space, which in turn has resulted in the chapter becoming highly independent, secretive, and isolationist in nature, as well as developing a number of traditions that some have deemed to be questionable at best. Because of the strong independent streak demonstrated by the chapter, the Star Phantoms have become infamous for frequently coming into conflict with not only other Space Marine chapters, but Imperial authorities as a whole, with the Star Phantoms rarely, if ever, deferring command to anyone outside of the chapter's ranks. While the Star Phantoms broadly comply with the tenets of the Codex Astartes, they do not follow it to the letter. Unlike many other chapters, who display a preference for slaughtering the enemies of mankind up close in melee combat, the Star Phantoms by comparison prefer to make use of long-ranged heavy weaponry in order to exterminate their foes at a distance, only assaulting the enemy at close range should it prove to be the most tactically viable option. While many other chapters may view the notion of combating one's foes at close quarters as being more noble or honourable, the Star Phantoms by contrast believe that no form of combat is inherently more glorious than another, and all that truly matters in battle is that their enemies are destroyed. Like other Space Marine chapters, the Star Phantoms hold their own unique set of cultural beliefs. In this case, the Battle Brothers of the chapter adhere to the teachings of what is known simply as the mortuary cult imperialis, which instills an almost unnatural obsession with death. Not only do the tenets of this cult reinforce the notion that the Emperor of Mankind is indeed a god incarnate, a belief that in itself is rarely held by the Adeptus Astartes, but the Star Phantoms, in keeping with their unusual fascination with death, refer to the Emperor as the Imperator Mortifex, judge of the souls of the dead and the keeper of martyrs. In addition, each member of the chapter views themselves as being nothing less than a pure killing machine, one whose creation was divinely ordained by the God Emperor himself, a rather literal interpretation of the term used to informally describe the Astartes, the Emperor's Angels of Death. As well as this, it is also a common sight throughout the chapter for a battle brother to carry talismans which are made from the bones or ashes of their fallen comrades. Because of their secretive, isolationist nature, their stubborn independence, bizarre fixation with death, and the curious mortuary practices undertaken by the chapter, the Star Phantoms would, unsurprisingly, become subjected to a full-scale inquisitorial investigation following their actions during the Makarian Heresy. Thankfully for the Star Phantoms, however, the chapter would ultimately be declared free of any heretical taint, although the agents of the Inquisition still remain somewhat concerned and vigilant regarding the chapter's rather curious system of beliefs. The gene seed of the Star Phantoms is also considered to be relatively pure, with no documented instances of any flaws, such as missing organs, psychological abnormalities, or physical mutations. Despite the purity and stability demonstrated by their gene seed, the identity of the chapter's parent legion and primogenitor Primarch remains somewhat of a mystery, as the genetic heritage of the Star Phantoms was said to have been shrouded in mystery since their very creation. The most commonly cited source of the Star Phantom's gene seed is said to be that of the first legion of the Legiones Astartes, the Dark Angels. But is there any sort of substantial connection between the Star Phantoms and the Dark Angels? One of the main reasons behind this speculation is due to the fact that the iconography of the Star Phantoms chapter, a skull and hourglass design, is in itself identical to the sigil utilised by the Dreadwing, one of the 6 wings of the original Dark Angels Legion from the time of the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. of these specialist wings, only two continue to exist within the modern-day Dark Angels chapter, the Death Wing and Raven Wing, which now fulfill the role of the chapter's first and second companies respectively. Because only two of the original 6 wings continue to see any sort of representation within the modern-day Dark Angels chapter, it would be logical to assume that those Astartes that served within the other 4 wings of the First Legion would form the core of any future successor chapters. Despite the apparent plausibility of such an assumption, both the Star Phantoms and the Dark Angels vehemently deny that any sort of link exists between the 2 chapters. In fact, not only do the Dark Angels view such claims as being utterly preposterous, but to insinuate such a relationship within the very presence of the Star Phantoms themselves, even through official channels, is considered to be an insult of the highest order. Given this denial exhibited by both chapters, it is feasible to assume that any similarity between the chapter iconography of the Star Phantoms and the hourglass sigil of the Dreadwing could simply be chalked up to coincidence. After all, there are numerous chapters who display a sigil that is similar, if not outright identical to that utilized by one of the first founding legions, despite said chapters being of an entirely different bloodline to the legion in question. One such example of this is shown with the Iron Fist chapter, whose iconography is similar to that displayed by those chapters who trace their genetic heritage to the Primarch Rogel Dawn, such as the Imperial Fists and Crimson Fists. Despite this, the Iron Fists are themselves a successor chapter of the Iron Hands, holding no genetic ties to the original Imperial Fists Legion. Another example is shown with the Hawklords chapter, who, despite their sigil being more or less identical to that of the Raven Guard, are in truth an Ultramarine successor chapter. However, a number of successor chapters are known to have drawn their monikers and even their very heraldry from a particular aspect of their parent legion. One such notable example is demonstrated with the Angels Vermilion, who took their name from the fact that the 9th chapter of the original Blood Angels Legion was known within official Legion records as the Angels Vermilion. As such, it's entirely within the realm of possibility for the Star Phantoms to have performed a similar such action, taking up the abandoned heraldry of the Dreadwing for themselves. But what makes such a notion seem somewhat unlikely, however, at least from an initial glance, is that many of those chapters who took their name and heraldry from a specific part of their primogenitor legions tend to be, though not always, from the earlier foundings, such as the 2nd and 3rd foundings, as opposed to the later ones, such as the 23rd, the founding which saw the creation of the Star Phantoms. Despite the chapter being officially founded during the 23rd founding, which occurred during M38, there have been reports of a Star Phantoms chapter operating as far back as M31, during the time of the 2nd founding. Within the novella Flesh of Cretaceia, which took place shortly after the events of the Horus Heresy, the Flesh Tearers chapter would receive a request for aid from the Star Phantoms in cleansing the Saccharis system of the Imperium's foes. However, Nassir Amit, the chapter master of the Flesh Tearers, would instead choose to focus his chapter's efforts in the purging of an Orc warband that the Flesh Tearers had recently come into conflict with, as detailed with the following quote.
"We do not answer to the Star Phantoms, and there will be time enough to cleanse Saqqara. We finish what we start."
Because of these contradicting sources in regards to the chapter's exact founding, this could potentially suggest that the Star Phantoms of the 23rd founding may have simply inherited the name and iconography of this supposed second founding incarnation of the Star Phantoms chapter. If there was indeed 2 different iterations of the Star Phantoms, then the chapter created during the 2nd founding could very well indeed have been a successor chapter of the Dark Angels, with their warriors having been drawn from the ranks of the Legion's Dreadwing formation. Such an action wouldn't be entirely unprecedented, as there have been documented accounts of chapters from different foundings sharing identical names. One such example is shown with the Minotaurs, with one incarnation of the chapter being active as early as M32, while the other was reported to have been established during the course of the 21st Cursed founding. Another such example is shown with the Soul Drinkers, which would see a second incarnation of the chapter being established during the course of the Ultima Founding, following the original second founding incarnation's destruction during the dying days of the 41st millennium, with the newer iteration of the Soul Drinkers being gifted the iconography and heraldry of the original. If this were indeed the case, and the modern day Star Phantoms simply inherited their name and iconography from an earlier, now extinct chapter, then this could explain as to why both the Star Phantoms and the Dark Angels continue to deny that any sort of connection exists between the two, for there would in fact appear to be none at all. This also provides a logical reason as to why the modern day Star Phantoms would view the idea of being linked to the Dark Angels as an insult, for they may view the notion of being compared to a chapter which was destroyed due to unknown circumstances as being not only dishonourable to them, but also to the previous incarnation of the Star Phantoms. As such, given the lack of reports detailing any notable flaws within their gene seed, this would appear to narrow down the list of potential primogenitors if the chapter's gene seed is truly drawn from one of the 9 Loyalist Legions to either the Ultramarines, White Scars, or the Iron Hands, should the Star Phantoms not be derived from Dark Angel's genetic stock after all. But if the Star Phantoms are in fact truly descended from the Dark Angels, then why would they both continue to deny that any sort of connection exists between the two chapters? There are a number of possibilities in this regard. The first of which is that the reason as to why the Dark Angels and the Star Phantoms continue to deny any sort of familial relationship with one another is to ensure that the Star Phantoms themselves are able to maintain a degree of plausible deniability. It's entirely possible that the Star Phantoms were founded at the request of the Dark Angels with a specific purpose in mind, before all records linking the two chapters together were either destroyed or conveniently lost. Such an idea wouldn't be entirely unprecedented, as the Disciples of Caliban chapter would be established at the request of Nassir, the then chapter master of the Dark Angels, for the sole purpose of hunting down the fallen Dark Angel known as Cypher. Because of this, it's logical to assume that the Star Phantoms were created with a similar reason in mind. Given the fact that the sigil of the Star Phantoms is identical to the one that had originally been sported by the Dreadwing, who were themselves famed and feared for the sheer amount of destruction and carnage that they could unleash upon their foes, thanks to their frequent use of Exterminatus-grade weaponry such as Phosphex and Vortex weapons in addition to their deadly Interemptor squads, it's possible that the Star Phantoms were created to, essentially, destroy any and all evidence pertaining to the actions of their fellow Unforgiven chapters. After all, the Unforgiven, the collective term given to the Dark Angels and their successor chapters, are known to participate in the Hunt for the Fallen, a secret mission to hunt down, capture, or kill those members of the original Dark Angels Legion that turned traitor during the course of the Horus Heresy. Since the Unforgiven are so determined to keep all knowledge regarding the Fallen hidden from all others, even to the point that such secrets are kept from the bulk of their fellow battle brothers, then it would make a degree of sense for the Dark Angels to establish some sort of contingency plan so as to ensure that the secrets of the Unforgiven remain undiscovered by the rest of the Imperium. As such, the Star Phantoms could have been created in order to destroy any potential evidence left by the Fallen so that the secret shame of the Unforgiven is never brought to light. If both chapters continue in their refusal to acknowledge any perceived connections that exist between them, then this by extension means that should the Star Phantoms ever be investigated for heresy due to any atrocities that they may have committed deliberately or otherwise for the sake of their mission, then neither the Dark Angels nor any other members of the Unforgiven would be implicated or investigated for the actions of the Star Phantoms. Alternatively, perhaps the Star Phantoms simply have no desire to associate themselves with their fellow Unforgiven chapters should they indeed be descended from the Dark Angels, having instead chosen to effectively sever all ties to their parent legion, even to the point of refusing to participate in the hunt for the Fallen. such an idea is not entirely outside the realm of possibility, as the Angels of Absolution believe that they have been completely absolved of the sins of their ancestors and no longer seek to hunt down the fallen for themselves, although the chapter will nonetheless lend their aid to their fellow Unforgiven chapters in this regard, so that they too may find absolution. Whatever the truth may be, the Star Phantoms will nonetheless seek to bring about the utter destruction and annihilation of the Emperor's foes, regardless as to which of the first founding legions they are truly descended from. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.